Hey guys, Dr. Shook here. This is another sauna session. What I want to talk to you about today is supplementation with tyrosine for thyroid dysfunction or hypothyroidism. Now, I'm not a fan of supplementing with tyrosine, and here's why. A lot of people think, well, if I'm deficient in tyrosine and because tyrosine is needed to manufacture your thyroid hormones T4 and T3, they think that tyrosine is going to be an ideal thing that they could take to help with the production of T4 and T3. Now, here's the thing. I'm not aware of today of any research studies that show supplementation with tyrosine increases thyroid hormone output. Okay. Now, if you have such a study, then okay, please do share it with me. I would love to know about it. But there are some consequences to taking tyrosine. So, I understand the idea to want to take tyrosine, to contemplate and think that it may be beneficial to put tyrosine into a supplement to help with thyroid hormone production, assuming that tyrosine is deficient. But here's the thing. Show me a study, first of all. Just because there's no research for it doesn't mean that it's not valuable. I want to say that. So I don't think that everything has to have research. Not everything can be put into a randomized controlled trial and studied in a way that, looking at one nutrient and how it affects physiology. But I don't know if that's easier to do than it is, for example, using the type of healthcare that, functional medicine to help someone get better, because you can't. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic of research. Okay. My main point here is show me if there you find a study or if there's a study that's been published that shows us that adding tyrosine helps to improve thyroid hormone output. Okay. Because there's not one that I know of. And actually there are consequences to taking tyrosine that I've seen that would caution that I would so that to the degree that I would caution someone against utilizing tyrosine, because in my experience that is not what they need, and in most cases it's going to create some negative side effects. So let me tell you about tyrosine a little bit. So we know that tyrosine is used in the manufacturing of T4 and T3, your thyroid hormones, which a lot of people that are hypothyroid, they mistakenly think that they just need more hormone, right? But really, there's a number of ways that that can break down. And most of you guys that are probably watching this have seen my whiteboard video where I explain from brain to cell how the thyroid hormone is made, transported, and utilized by the cell. If you haven't, please go there and you'll understand more about why just thinking and considering and only looking at quantity of thyroid hormone is a big mistake. So anyway, with tyrosine supplementation, here's the problem with it. First of all, I don't know of any studies that show that it helps. Some people will take it and they'll say, well, I know it helps because I feel better. And I'm like, well, okay, why do you feel better? And they're like, well, because it's helping my thyroid. And I'm like, well, how do you know? And they're like, well, because I feel better. And I'm like, okay, what if it's doing something other than stimulating your thyroid? What if it's actually doing something that could suppress your thyroid, but at the same time gives you energy, at least temporarily? What if that's happening? So let me tell you the story. What tends to happen with tyrosine is a precursor, meaning you have to have it to make dopamine. Now, dopamine is one of your brain neurotransmitters. Our neurotransmitters are going to be dopamine, serotonin, GABA, acetylcholine. Okay, these are some of our neurotransmitters. They run our nervous system. Okay, so dopamine, if you take tyrosine, it's a precursor to dopamine. Dopamine is a precursor. It's needed for the manufacturing of your adrenal gland hormones, epinephrine and norepinephrine. Okay, now your adrenal glands, if you don't know this, they're little walnut-sized glands that sit on top of your kidneys. They produce cortisol and a lot of other hormones, but they produce your adrenaline, which is epinephrine and norepinephrine. Okay, so what does adrenaline do? Well, it stimulates your fight or flight response, right? If someone terrifies you and jumps out and scares you, your heart rate spikes, and you have what we call a fight or flight response. It stimulates this part of your nervous system that's involuntary. It's called the autonomic nervous system. It's completely involuntary. And in particular, that autonomic system has two primary divisions: sympathetic, which is your fight or flight, and parasympathetic, which is your, we could say, rest and digest system. So when your fight or flight's dominant, rest and digest side of the autonomic nervous system isn't functioning at a high level. When sympathetic is calmed down, rest and digest tends to be more active. Okay, and you have to have balance with that system. But so one of the things the reason this is important is because tyrosine can stimulate the production of epinephrine and norepinephrine. And so what does it do when you have higher adrenaline? How do you feel? You feel more awake, you feel more alert, you feel like you have more energy. So might you mistake taking tyrosine and stimulating your adrenal glands and the production of adrenaline, which would give you more energy, might you mistake that for increased and improved thyroid hormone activity or thyroid hormone levels? Of course, absolutely, right? Because what's the number one symptom primarily with hypothyroidism is it's going to be like low energy, right? So if you stimulate your adrenal glands and you drive your adrenals more and you have more energy, you're like, wow, this is working. It's working. But it's not working the way you think it's working. Okay, this is one really important thing. And here's another thing that's very, very important. This increased stimulation of these catecholamines, this adrenaline, noradrenaline, you get production of cortisol, can suppress thyroid hormone activity. Okay, so you might actually be taking something that's stimulating your adrenals, like tyrosine that's stimulating your adrenals, because you produce more epinephrine and norepinephrine, you're producing more cortisol. So you think you feel better, so obviously it's working in your mind, right? But you don't realize that the chemistry is such that you're actually stimulating your adrenals and not your thyroid, and that by stimulating the adrenals this way, you may actually suppress thyroid hormone function further. And so what happens is when you keep stimulating and riding the adrenals this way, you can deplete the adrenals and you can cause them to go into different stages of exhaustion where they fatigue, right? And they don't respond as well. You can deplete the precursors, the vitamins and minerals needed to make adrenal hormones. You can deplete pregnenolone. If you don't understand what pregnenolone is, it's an intermediate hormone that's used to make cortisol. It also is, the hormone is shared to make cortisol, progesterone, and DHEA, which makes your testosterone and your estrogens. And if you're constantly making cortisol, taking tyrosine, stimulating epinephrine, norepinephrine, you're making cortisol, you're going to steal away that pregnenolone, and you can have deficiencies in progesterone and in estrogens and testosterone and not even know why. Think that your body just can't make it. When in reality, it could come back down to this adrenal mechanism, okay? That's causing this thing called a pregnenolone steal. If you don't understand that, I've done another whiteboard video on pregnenolone steal and the things that drive it. Super important videos for you to understand. Super important. I mean, there's probably two of the most important videos that I teach. So here's the thing. I don't recommend tyrosine because it's usually not the mechanism that's contributing to the person's problem. So I hope this helps you guys understand, because a lot of thyroid supplements are going to have what? Tyrosine. And what else? Iodine. And iodine's a whole nother video that we can talk about, but I don't recommend iodine for people that are hypothyroid. And they're saying, and even if they say, yeah, but I'm deficient in iodine and I see this and my doctor said I need it. And that's okay. Okay, so if you're deficient in iodine, we think that the amount of iodine you need per day is about like 52 micrograms. Okay, so you can get that pretty easily. Like, so for me and for people I work with, I don't like them to exceed a threshold of about like 250 micrograms of iodine per day. And they have to have selenium in their diet because it has some protective effects against iodine. So because we know that iodine, because we see all these population studies that have been done in other countries where they introduce iodine, and because here's the thing, in non-industrialized countries, the number one cause of hypothyroidism is iodine deficiencies. It causes them to develop huge goiters, the enlargement of the thyroid. And so when they introduce iodine, they can help improve hypothyroidism in a major way. And you can't be hypothyroid. Guys, we've talked about hypothyroidism in a lot of other videos, and every cell in the body needs it. You know, children, man, it will cause major developmental problems in children. It will create advanced degeneration in an adult if you're deficient in thyroid hormone, because every cell needs it. Without it, you have poor thyroid hormone activity, and the cell cannot rebuild, repair, and carry out its proteomic responses, drive your metabolism, numerous problems, right? So you can't be deficient in thyroid hormones. Just you can't be. So when they introduce iodine in these population studies, they find that people, they fix hypothyroidism, but what they find is a statistically significant spike in Hashimoto's. So what happens is these people are taking iodine, it's triggering Hashimoto's, which we know is a trigger for Hashimoto. They're taking iodine, it's a trigger for Hashimoto's, and we see this in these population studies. So there's actually research that shows that when restricting iodine has helped people with Hashimoto's return to a euthyroid status where they're like basically essentially it's normal. And so when you look at this, you think, man, we don't want to over recommend and suggest that someone take iodine. That's my perspective. And a lot of people, there's a lot of experts out there that recommend high dose iodine, and I think that one of the main mechanisms there is that the increased iodine production actually suppresses the thyroid to a degree that you feel better, that you suppress some of the activity of the TPO production, and it actually um, improves how you feel, because you have less TPO, which is the target enzyme for the autoimmune process. If you have Hashimoto's, TPO is the primary target for the immune system to attack. So if you don't have as much of it there for the immune system to attack, then you don't have as much tissue destruction, and you may feel better because there's less activity of the immune system. But is that because there's suppression of TPO due to high iodine? Right? I mean, that's not the mechanism. What I'm really ultimately always trying to figure out and help people with, and I'm always learning. So I'm will tell you that I'm open to any of your information that you guys have. Like, I'm always open to that, because I don't feel like I know everything by any means. This is where I am right now in my understanding and what I believe to be true as far as how to help people. And I just think that basically that high iodine shutting down TPO, decreasing the thyroid, the Hashimoto's activity, and then what ends up happening is people feel better because of that. But is that really addressing the mechanism behind it? Like why you're autoimmune? I mean, it's like, you're getting possibly symptomatic relief, but at like what cost, and what are the repercussions to that? So, my ultimate approach is, all right, let's try to figure out the best we can, like how to support the person, their physiology normally. And so if it's an autoimmune process, which is what most people have, they have Hashimoto's, then let's address the drivers of the autoimmunity and try to take those out of the person's diet and environment so that their immune system can calm down. Let's give their immune system what it needs to have better immune regulation. Like vitamin D is one simple example. Vitamin D levels, sorry guys, it's really hot in here. It's about 157. It's hard to even breathe and think at the same time here. So anyway, I think trying to address the most specifically what's happening to the person. Is it they have problems with, where's their physiology breaking down, and then address what's driving that process. And so most people are going to be autoimmune. So you look at partially digested food proteins, chronic infections, and environmental chemicals, and you look at cortisol too, because cortisol, your stress hormone, if it's high or low, it thins the barrier systems of your body, which are your GI tract, your lung barrier, your blood-brain barrier, your skin. Those are the primary barrier systems, and you thin those. You can cause, if it's too high or too low, cortisol's too high or too low, you can thin those, and they become compromised, and they keep things out of the bloodstream that shouldn't be there, so that you don't have an immune response. And everyone's heard of leaky gut now, right? So what's driving your leaky gut? You can take glutamine and zinc and slippery elm bark and all these other things until the cows come home, and maybe you feel good when you're taking them. But when you remove those from your diet, how do you feel? See, that's the goal, is like to not take a bunch of stuff forever, right? Or at least it is in my mind. It's like, so withdrawal of supplementation is important. It's important. I don't think you need to take stuff forever. But here's the thing. So what you do is you figure out like what's best you can, what's driving the person's problems. If they have hypothyroidism, if supplementation's suggested or you think it's needed, then you introduce a supplemental protocol with a plan and an end point. Not a forever, this is good for you to take forever. And then what you do is you try to do a withdrawal of the supplementation, and you see if the person crashes. If they crash, then you say, okay, why did they crash? What's causing them to need glutamine and zinc all the time? And if you haven't had like a stool test, then there could be a chronic infection there. And if there's a chronic infection, maybe that's perpetuating GI inflammation and causing this problem, and you're having to take zinc and glutamine to try to help rebuild and heal that gut wall. But you're never going to make long-term progress if the problem is that there's an infection. Or maybe there's poor brain activation of the GI tract. So you get slow GI tract motility, you get fermentation, which sets you up for yeast overgrowth, bacterial overgrowth, parasitic infections, because you don't have enough stomach acid production due to poor brain or vagal nerve activity of the stomach to produce the hydrochloric acid to help improve the sterility or make the gut more sterile so that parasites can't live. If you eat them in your food and you have enough acid, maybe it kills it and it doesn't take over your gut. There's a lot of different reasons for it, but if you're trying a trial and error protocol, which I think is absolutely reasonable for a lot of people, okay? I think I can't say any individual person like what you need. I mean, I can't, like, there's no way to know like what's right for any individual person. But a lot of people have had success changing diet and maybe doing some temporary supplementation. There's got to be a strategy to get you off. You got to think long term. You don't just think like, okay, here's front end. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this stuff and I'm going to eat my diet and I'm going to feel good. And then you're like, okay, a month, 2 months, 3 months in, you're like, man, I feel good. Now what? Do you eat that way forever? Do you reintroduce foods? Do you get off those supplements? Well, what happens if you come off those supplements and you don't feel well? What happens if you start tapering and reintroducing food and you don't feel well? So how do you really figure out why the person feels the way they feel? Well, you get more specific information, or you work through the trial and error process with a little bit more specificity and a little bit more organization. So you just track everything the best you can. And if you do withdrawal of supplementation and you have flare-ups and you crash, well, you have to ask questions like, did I have something stressful happen? Did I have, what could have promoted this crash in my health or my symptoms or my gut or my bowel health, my digestion? And you have to think about it, and you have to say, well, does that make sense or not? If it doesn't make sense, then you kind of deplete your trial and error options, and then it's like, well, okay, let's get some testing done to see if we can't identify the drivers of this process. So anyway, this is a lot of stuff. I started about tyrosine with you guys, then we kind of get into supplementation. Is it really necessary long term? What should your goals be? And that's different for every doctor, manages that differently. I personally want everyone to try to get their nutrients from food at some point. Now, I take nutritional supplements temporarily, like I spurt dose them. If I have a problem with digestion or something like that, then I have a protocol that I'll use for a few days to help get me back, my gut health improved. Okay, so I just want to share that with you guys. It's going way longer than I expected to. We're at like 17 minutes now. So anyway, I appreciate you guys. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope this helps you guys out a lot. I really appreciate you coming here to learn more about your health. Please do. If you guys get value from the stuff that we teach, share it with people, because I talk to people every day. I talk to people that are part of our group that have watched a lot of my videos, and they just don't know what they don't know. And their doctors only, a lot of doctors, primary allopathic medicine doctors, primary care physicians, and endocrinologists, they're so busy and they're so focused on helping people with the problems that they can address with surgeries and medications. They're still overburdened by those people. So when you come in with like a problem and you got a thick notebook and you got all these questions and they've only got like 15 minutes, it creates so much stress in their life, and they, sometimes they come across the wrong way with you. And it's not that they're bad people at all. They're not bad people, but they're not really equipped with the model of healthcare that they practice to help you with these issues. So, share this information with people. Share our videos if you would. Please help us help other people, because what my goal is to help you guys help yourself first, and then you become empowered so you can be better partners with your healthcare physicians. That's one of the main goals, is because we got to work together. Everyone's got to work together. If we don't do that, we're doing everyone a great disservice. Okay, so anyway, I appreciate you guys. I really hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope it's been helpful. And I'll talk to you in the next sauna session or live streaming video. Thanks.